Hey guys, this is Kerry, and in this video, we're going to be creating an app very similar to this one, but probably even cooler. We may even have time to create a second one, which would be similar as well. So in order to create this, we're going to be working with some new tools. So I'm going to close down the example and get started coding from scratch. All right, so I've got my toolbox open, and I've got Sublime Text open. So I'm going to save the file as an HTML file, problem1.html. We'll generate the basic HTML structure. We're going to do the same things we normally do. Grab the expansion pack from the toolbox, Command-C, pretty paste, Command-Shift-V. Create script tags of our own. And now we're ready to start programming. Before we do any programming in JavaScript, actually, we're going to go back and do a little bit of HTML and CSS. So above this first tag, let's create a more interesting page than just a blank white page. Let's start by creating a header 1. So we do left angle bracket H1 tab. And now we'll title our project Drawing with JavaScript. And similar to creating that element, we also need to create an element to draw on. And the element to draw on in JavaScript is called the canvas. So we're going to make a canvas. Now the canvas, you need to specify two attributes. So before the end of the opening tag, before that right angle bracket, put in width equals 600 pixels and height equals 400 pixels. Height equals. And your color coding should match the color coding in the video. In this case, if it doesn't, you should stop here and figure out where is the mistake. All right, so let's do Control-click, open in browser, and we've got our web page. Now, it's really easy to see the H1, but I don't see the canvas. So before we program in JavaScript, it would be good to style things to make it a little easier to see. So go into the head of your document, create some style tags, and let's use some CSS. So grabbing the H1 element, or selecting the H1 element, will allow us to center it. So let's do text-align center. Of course, you can do other things like change the color to, I don't know, purple. Now you've got that centered. In order to see the canvas, select the canvas element. It doesn't have an ID, so we just use its element type, canvas. And we do, I don't know, border, 2 pixels, solid, black. And that should help us see where the white canvas is, because now we'll have a border. So save it, refresh it. There's our canvas. And to center that, we're going to do the same thing we do to center images, which is display block, margin, auto. All right, so we've got our web page all set up, and we're ready to draw on the canvas. And so I'm trying to click and draw and drag, but none of that works. And the reason why is, in order to draw on this canvas, we actually draw using code. So we're going to be using JavaScript to draw in this rectangle. So it's time to go down into the JavaScript. If we want to use JavaScript to draw in this rectangle, the first thing we have to do is select the canvas. And that should intentionally, using the select word there, maybe jostle a memory of how you select things. So either you go to the toolbox and you look it up, well, how do I select something? Oh, here it is, selecting an element. Or you just remember to select an element. You say let canvas equal document.querySelector. And then the thing that we're going to be selecting is the canvas element, so we just put canvas in quotes. There is no hashtag, because this is not an ID, so we leave it as canvas. Now to draw on the canvas, we need to specify what context we're drawing in. And I'm not too familiar with the options. I don't do much drawing in the canvas, but one option is the 2D option. So let's set the context that we're going to be drawing into the canvas.context, or .getContext, sorry. And then the context is going to be, in quotes, 2D. All right, so we are ready to draw on our canvas. And one thing I thought could be interesting to draw would be a circle. So let's look up how to draw a circle on Canvas with JS, because like I said, I'm not that experienced, and actually I'm trying to model what programming might look like. You often work with packages that you're not familiar with, or groups of functions that you're not familiar with, so you Google them. All right, the first one I've clicked, HTML canvas arc. And this looks like a good one. So to create a circle, it looks like we're going to be doing this. Now we've done this. We used let instead of var because we're using an updated version of JavaScript. But this part we have not done. So let's copy and paste this over. And hopefully that draws a circle for us. So let's save it and refresh it. So now the important thing about copying and pasting is you want to really understand what these numbers are. So as you copy and paste it, let's see, begin path, that makes sense. Stroke means it's going to draw that path actually. Arc let's see, this is the part where there's a lot of different parameters. So if we change the 100 to 150, let's see how that changes things. Okay, it looks like the circle moves in the x direction. If we change the 75 to 200, let's see what happens. It moves the circle in the y direction. So let's see, it's x direction, y direction. If we change the 50, maybe you have a guess what's going to happen, 25. Okay, so that next one is the radius. And then this 0 to 2 pi, that's the size of the arc. So if you change this from 0 to 2 pi to just 0 to math.pi, perhaps you remember from Algebra 2 that pi radians is 180 degrees. So this will draw a 180 degree arc. But we want to do full circles, so we're going to do 2 times math.pi. So I'm going to leave the 0 and the 2 times math.pi each time, because that's one full circle. All right, instead of ctx.stroke, I think we're going to change it to ctx.fill, and that will create a solid circle. All right, so we've got the basic ideas. But this is a good point to bring up something called an abstraction, right? Drawing a circle takes these 3 lines of code, and it's quite complicated to think about, okay, every time I draw a circle, I want to copy this, paste that, and then change the numbers, and our code is quickly going to become unreadable. So this provokes a really good opportunity for us to create a new function. And that function is going to be the drawCircle function. So when we draw a circle, we're going to need to give it 3 things. We're going to need to give it the x center, the y center, and the radius. And if we give it those 3 things, then we want to draw a circle at this center with this radius. So since this is the code to draw a circle, let's Command X cut this, and then Command Shift V paste that into draw circle. And what this will let us do is it will let us think, okay, whenever we want to draw a circle, we can just use our new draw circle function instead of focusing on these individual steps, which were a little confusing. Now, we do need to change some things. The circle does not always have x-coordinate 150. The x-coordinate of the center will always be whatever value we put as the x-center parameter. Similarly, for the y-center, it should not be 200. It should be whatever the y-center was. And the radius should be whatever the radius is. So to give you guys an idea of how powerful this abstraction is, now whenever we want to draw a circle, we just type draw circle. We want the center to be 10, I don't know, 100, and the radius to be 8. Draw another circle. We want the center to be 90, the y-center to be 300, and the radius to be 50. Draw another circle. We want the x-coordinate to be 400, the y-coordinate center to be, I don't know, 80, and then the radius to be 100. So let's see how this looks. So we've got our 3 circles, the radius 8, radius 50, and radius 100. And that's pretty powerful because we didn't have to think about it step by step anymore. We were just using that big process. So let's see what other algorithms we can define, what other abstractions we can use in order to make this program even more complete. So one thing that will be useful is if we wanted to create something that draws random circles, we need to really create a random circle generator. Not a random circle generator, a random number generator. So up here when we're defining functions, let's say function generate random. And when we want to generate a random number, we want to specify the minimum number that it can be and the maximum number that it can be. Now this function is a little bit more mathy than the last function, and we're going to be building it from scratch. So in JavaScript, we've learned that to create a random number, it comes with a function called math.random. And that always generates a random decimal from 0 to 1. So we're going to start by generating a random decimal from 0 to 1. So to do that, let random decimal equal math.random. But when we think about generating random numbers, we're going to want random whole numbers for the radius, or random whole numbers for the coordinates. So what we need to do is we need to scale these numbers up. So if you wanted a number from 0 to 100, you could do math.random times 100. And now that random decimal is going to be converted to a random number from 0 to 100. But it's not quite right? We don't want a decimal. So maybe after doing that, we want to round the whole thing. So math.round, math.random times 100. And this should give us, oops, math.random has quotes here. This should give us a random whole number from 0 to 100. All right, so let's let scale up equal math.round, the random number that we made, which we're calling random decimal. But it's not always going to be times 100 in this case, because the range between the min number and the max number won't necessarily be 100 possible numbers. In order to find that range, we're going to say let range equal the max number minus the min number. And then instead here, when we scale it up, it should be random decimal times whatever that range of values was. Now to get the final number, let final number equal whatever the minimum number was plus that scaled up spread of numbers. And we need to get access to that final number, so we need to return that out of the function. Return out the final number. Okay, so let's save it and refresh it. Nothing's changed because we've still drawn these circles. At this point, I think it makes sense for us to start to define not what it means to draw a regular circle, but to draw a random circle. So let's do function draw random circle. Now this circle is going to take in no parameters because, or sorry, this function is going to take in no parameters because we're going to be generating all of these things randomly. So let's let the x center equal generate a random number. And if we think about the possible x values, on our x scale it goes from 0 to the width. And our width was 600 pixels. So let's generate a random number from 0 to 600. Let's let our y center equal generate a random number from 0 to, our height was 400 pixels, so from 0 to 400. So that would be from here to here. Now, for our radius, let's let our radius be another random number from 0, no, 0 radius doesn't really make sense. Let's say from 10 to 50, so we get a good spread of radii. And then after generating all those random numbers, we want to draw a circle with this center, this x center, this y center, and this radius. So we use our draw circle abstraction with x center, y center, and radius as the parameters. So instead of using these circles at specific values, let's call our draw random circle function, I don't know, 4 times and see what happens. So you got 4 random circles, and if we refresh it, they're constantly changing because it's generating a random pattern each time. So that's pretty cool, and you can think about animating this maybe by taking a screenshot each time it refreshes, and I don't know, that's interesting. But maybe it would be more interesting if it animated actually creating those circles. So if we wanted to create the same process over time, we have a way of doing that. Whenever you want to repeat something over time, let's think about the loops we've learned. We've learned a set interval loop, a for each loop, a repeat loop, and a repeat until loop. In this case, because we want to repeat something over an interval, I think we want to grab our set interval tool. So let's grab set interval, paste it here, and then the function that we want to repeat is we want to just draw a random circle. Nope, not draw a circle, draw random circle. And it takes no parameters because it's empty here, so it's empty here. And we want to draw a random circle maybe every half a second, so every 500 milliseconds. So let's save it and refresh it. And now it draws a random circle every half a second. And maybe that's too slow, so you want to speed it up. So you would say every 200 milliseconds or every 100 milliseconds. And thinking about how we can make this even more interesting, it seems like maybe if the circles were different colors, it'd be even prettier. So let's create a function that will generate a random color. So function generate random color. Now we talked a little bit about how JavaScript thinks about colors. When JavaScript thinks about colors, it it uses, or not when JavaScript, when computers think about colors, they think about a red amount, a green amount, and a blue amount. And by mixing those in the right proportions, you can actually create any color. So we might want to think about the range of possible values. Each color can go from 0 to 255, and that would be like the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue. So before we generate a random color, let's look at an example of how we'd get a specific color. So if we go into the draw circle function, we're now going to modify it. And this partially illustrates the power of abstractions as well, which is, rather than having to change this multiple times, by changing the color once, it will change the color each time the function's called. So to change the color, we're going to say ctx.fillStyle is going to style is equal to RGB, and I'm just going to make up random numbers to start, 40, 200, 70. So this is going to have 40 of the red, 200 of the green, 70 of the blue, so it's going to be mostly green. Let's give it a save and a refresh. And now our circles aren't black anymore. They've got this RGB color. But instead of generating the same color circle each time, which creates kind of a monotonous sort of look, it would be fun to have random colored circles. So let's go back to our random color function. So to create a random color, we need to create 3 random numbers. So let's let red equal generate a random number from 0 to 255. And this is the power of having that algorithm. We've used the generate random function so many different ways, generating the x and y coordinates of the center, generating the radius, generating a random red color. Let's let green equal generate random 0 to 255. Let's let, I'm just going to copy and paste here, let's let blue equal a random number from 0 to 255, blue equal a random number from 0 to 255 as well. And then we'll have let total color equal, and it looks like the format for the total color is a string like this. So RGB parenthesis plus whatever the red was, plus comma, plus whatever the green was, plus comma, plus whatever the blue was, plus parenthesis. And now, since we want access to this total color outside of the function, we need to return it out. So let's return total color so that we can access that anywhere we want. All right, so ctx.fillStyle, we no longer want it to be RGB 40, 270. Every time we draw a circle, we should start by creating a new color. So let's let new color equal, and it's a complicated process to create a new color, but the power of this abstraction is now, in order to create a random color, we just use the generate random color function right here. And then let's let the ctx.fillStyle equal whatever that new color that was created was. So save it and refresh it, and now we've got pretty remarkable, pretty cool random colored circles appearing. That's pretty awesome. So I think that's where we're going to end this video. And you can think about what are some of the ways you could change things here. And maybe that's interesting. All right, see you guys in class.